on drdino.com. We're going to be on everything. All right. Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it. Bye.
All right. Thanks, Pastor.
Right.
Well, we didn't get around to predestination, but we'll do it next time.
That is true. Now,
I had so many notes, Stephen. I did all day putting notes together.
I know, man. I know.
It's like nobody even cares anymore.
Well, you know, that was a good opening debate, and I'm glad the kinks with most of the kinks with the audio went out. They went away, so that was
he got
great.
a lot better. Yeah, and I think I heard most of his opening statement because I kind of read his lips, you know.
Well, and he usually has a very strong opening statement, but it's also usually the same opening statement every time. So if you have heard it, you probably heard close to what it would have been.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much figured on what it was going to be.
Yeah. Yeah, but great topic with you guys back and forth.
Yeah,
Stump, it's really good to see you and Lupin.
Yeah, good to see you guys too. Yeah.
Good to see you guys.
You guys are doing, or you're done?
No, I'm not going to shut it down yet. I'll leave it up for a little while. I do have to step away. I have to help my girlfriend feed 2 little kittens that she's fostering from the animal shelter. So I have to step away for like 10 or 15, 20 minutes to do that. But if you guys want to keep the conversation going, I can keep this up for you.
That's up to these fellas, whatever they want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm here if you guys want to hang out for a minute.
I can stay for maybe, what time is it right now? It's like 8:20.
It's 8:20. Hey, that's up to you guys. If you want to, I will leave it open, and I'll try to come back in a few minutes to make sure Dustin's not trying to get in or something, and I can accept him. Or
yeah, I can hang out till like 9 o'clock, maybe 9:15.
Pastor Chuck, if you're out there, if you could join and help monitor and let people in and out, that would be great too.
Can I be co-host?
I can't change it like that.
Okay.
In and out. I pay for the 2nd tier subscription, and I only get like 1 seat in that aspect. But you guys continue on. I'm gonna go run and help feed these kittens, and then I'll be back with you.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah. So, Christian, if I could just clarify, you said that you think God made the different kinds of animals as in Genesis, and also the kinds of plants that we have today.
Yeah, whatever that word "kind" means, I believe He made that.
Well, I know in Genesis, on the 4th day, He says He made trees. For instance, let's say trees. So you think these are the same trees, or they are?
They're definitely not the same trees, but they're still trees.
Okay. The trees evolved to be, well, we don't know, right? You were saying they're trees.
The same way that they evolved today.
And so now we're saying the trees and the plants, the grass, I think it says herbs and trees were created on the, he said, let the earth bring forth on the 3rd day. And therefore, these are just different, evolved, and whatever they look like now, they just evolved from whatever they started at.
Well,
but animals are different, you think, right?
I believe there were originally created kinds, whatever that means, because that's what the Bible says.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with this idea of static biology is that we know for a fact that it's not true.
Well, doesn't the fossil record show like things that appear now like a dragonfly were just larger at one time, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. They changed.
Well, I mean, in size, but they basically look the same. Wings.
Do you think size is the only way that things have changed?
I'm saying, say it again.
Do you think that size is the only way that things have changed?
I don't know. I don't know, because we can't tell exactly from a fossil.
Sure.
You know, like for instance, the internal organisms are that make up these whatever they are. Sure. But so I'm just trying to clear this up. But so then animals. Were they made after whatever kind?
Yeah, I believe, Stump, exactly what the Bible says to the best of my ability.
Mm-hmm.
So if the Bible says that God created them after their kind, that's what I believe.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to see where evolution came to play, other than like,
well,
you know.
You got to understand stuff. When you guys, I tried to cover, I don't know if you were listening during the opening statements, but I had prepared a fairly long and detailed opening statement.
Yeah.
The word evolution is often misused. And one of the things that I said in the opening statement was, if people who are uncomfortable with the extrapolations and assumptions that have been associated with that word don't want to use that word, then I understand that. But all the word means in an academic sense is descent with inherent modification. That's all it means.
Okay. So then, for instance, you say a man is in these present forms, you know, you point your, like you show your hand and stuff, like in this present form was not created by God. I think we understand that.
Well,
right?
everything was created by God. I'm just saying that what you're looking at on the screen is not the man he created.
Christian, do you believe that man was always man?
I believe that man was always the mankind. Does that make sense?
So okay. So you believe that man was always mankind. So do you not believe, so would you say that we are or we are not related to chimps, apes?
It depends, Lupin, on how you're using the word related. If you're using the word related in a literal sense to say that we share a common ancestor with chimps, obviously we do not know that to be true. But if you're using the word related in the sense that how Linnaeus classified things, we are classified as apes correctly.
Yeah, but they're trying to say that we came from apes and that we are apes.
Well,
so
I'm not them, Lupin. I'm just me.
Right, but that's what evolution teaches, and that's what you believe in.
No,
it is.
No, it's not.
Well, I'm confused by your answer, though, Christian. You said that humans are the humankind.
Yes.
And apes are the ape kind.
Yes.
And there's no connection between the two, other than God may have used some of the same.
Yeah, I don't personally believe there's a connection.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it's a weird question because I do believe that this body is correctly classified as an ape, but I don't believe that if you traced our ancestry back, I don't think that we would hit a Y with chimpanzees. I do not believe that.
So why do you say this body is classified as ape is correct?
Well, because Linnaeus' system of classification was based on morphology, and we have morphological traits that classify us as great apes.
Okay. And morphology means what?
Stuff on the body that's like other stuff on other bodies.
Like a nose, eyes, ears, mouth.
It's a little bit more detailed than that, but yes.
But that's what he based it on. Appearance, basically.
Well, in bipedalism, opposable thumbs, the spinal column.
Well, okay. So that's what he based his
well, are you familiar with Carolus Linnaeus?
I mean, so no, I'm not.
Well, he got famous. He got famous, a couple hundred years ago because he was the first guy to say, look, we have to organize all the living organisms into a category so we can teach this to the kids as a subject in science. We don't know anything about living organisms, and they got stuff for physics and they got stuff for this. So we have to have a system of classification for living organisms for the convenience of teaching. So Carolus Linnaeus was a creationist. He did not believe in the interrelationship between different kinds of animals, but he did, to the best of his ability, try to classify all of the animals and organize them into categories based on their morphological traits. And when he got down to human beings, he had to, against his own will, classify them as great apes because they share morphological traits with great apes.
Well, it just means how you decide to classify something.
Right.
And that's also a human classification.
That's what you mean.
It's just a human
that's all. It doesn't mean that they, like you said, at any time they.
I think I can answer your question. So I think I figured out what your question is. This right here, I believe, is the coats of skin that was put on them. Does that answer your question?
What? Huh?
This, what you're looking at, what we call the mankind. Whatever the original version of man was and his kind created. I believe this is the coats of skin.
Oh, the coats of skin from Genesis 1. Or Genesis 2, rather. Oh, no, 3.
Yes.
Genesis 3. Huh. Okay.
So were the coats of skin before, were they like hairy like monkeys?
No, they were whatever Jesus was on the Mount of Transfiguration. They were celestial bodies.
That's right. We agree on that part. Yeah, we agree on that part.
Yeah, this is a coat of skin. This is not the image of God.
But we're created in the image of God.
No, man was created in the image of God. This is an animal.
Oh, well, we kind of disagree on that, but okay. I see your point. We're not, this is a corrupted original creation.
Yeah, I believe that God created the mankind when he created the ape kind and the other kinds because he knew by foreknowledge that man would fall and he prepared this.
Oh, what? Say that again?
I believe that this created kind, what we call the mankind, you have the ape kind and the elephant kind. Well, we call them that. We don't really know what they were, but whatever the original mankind was, I believe God created by foreknowledge, knowing that they would fall from grace and prepared as a vessel for them, which he called coats of skin.
Okay.
And I think that's fairly obvious in the scriptures, honestly.
Right, but you don't
Christian.
believe that men evolved from anything other than they've always been to mankind.
Well, when you say evolved, I mean every creature is always evolving, but I do believe in an original mankind.
No, I mean from evolved from another type, like a monkey type kind.
Yeah, I don't personally believe that we share a common ancestor with orangutans and gorillas. That's not my conviction.
So you kind of have a faulty foundation then to even believe in evolution in that way. I'm looking at every chart. I see every chart that I see has evolution starting with a monkey and ending with a man.
Have I showed you any of those charts?
But I mean, if you believe in evolution, you're technically agreeing with that. You're technically agreeing with that.
Lubin, everybody in this room, including Brother Hovind back when he was in this room, believes in evolution the way that I believe in it, including you.
I don't know if that's true or not.
I believe it to be true very strongly.
Yeah, I think either two parts. We either misunderstood, Christian, what you believed, or you've changed your mind since you spoke.
I haven't changed my mind. I wrote a book about this, man.
It just seems to me that you've changed, but maybe
I think maybe we were having trouble really understanding each other before, Stump.
I think so, because right now you agree with what I believe, that things do change, but they don't.
Well, that was my point to Brother Hovind. That was my whole point to him, was hand waving away Darwin is incredibly irresponsible, because for all of Darwin's fallacies and all of his assumptions, that does not take away from the tremendous discovery of natural selection. That was a great human achievement.
I mean, I don't know if Darwin even really necessarily discovered. Discovered is a hard term. Natural selection could have been something that we've known about probably from the pre-flood. Natural selection could have been known about. Darwin maybe popularized it.
Be a teapot orbiting Mars, but Darwin wrote about it.
Sure. But
before you talked about millions of years needed. So what's
I have no idea how old the Earth is. I think it's evident that it's a whole lot older than you guys think it is.
I mean, but that was one of your points for evolution, I believe, was that it takes millions of years for these.
No, my point for the time scale. My point for the time scale, Stump, was that I don't think the Bible teaches 6,000 years.
Because of what?
I've read it. I've never seen it teach that.
Okay. I've totally misunderstood what you were.
Have you read the entire Bible cover to cover, Stump?
Several times, yes.
Okay, I've read it too. I've never one time read through the Bible, got done, and say, yeah, God wants me to think the world's 6,000 years old. I've never had that happen once.
Well, I've had it happen because I believe that his 6 days is what he's going to repeat for 6,000 years. And then the 7th day.
If you're a young Earth creationist, it's not that difficult, but yeah.
I'm not a young Earth creationist.
The hardest part is the pre-flood world, and that's if you want to trust the Bible and what it says there. And as a Christian, and I trust that the Bible is God's word, it doesn't sound like it could be millions of years. I think that might be man's interpretation of it, but
Christian.
I can't go with millions.
Well, I don't know how old it is. I just think it's evidently a lot older than 6,000. What were you saying, Ghostman?
I heard people say that God made the earth to be old in the first place because that's how everything works.
He made it to be old in the first place? I'm not sure I understand what that means.
Like he made Adam look 30, but he was just created.
That's
I see your point. Yeah.
The only problem I have with that as it relates to it is true that the earth must have come into existence and then been an earth. But to create the earth in such a way where human discovery would lead them to believe that it's old when it's not, the Bible says God is not the author of confusion. So I probably don't think that.
The only place I see time for older earth is on the first day. Because the first day is, I believe, when the fall happened with Adam and Eve, and before the fall, there was no time in motion, as we're not stuck in time now. We weren't inside of time, so that's the only way I see where it could be older. Because there was a heaven and earth created, and in the beginning, God created heaven and earth. That's Genesis 1:1, and we don't know how long that was.
Yeah, correct. I agree with you.
So that's the only place I could see for what you're saying, because there was a physical earth and a heaven then, but. Yeah, I've misunderstood your point, because really what you're saying doesn't have any bearing on Scripture at all.
Well, my whole conversation with Brother Hovind was just simply how, when we use the word evolution, whether positively or negatively, what we intend for the audience to understand that we mean. And it's kind of like the analogy. I don't know if you were around for the whole thing, but I gave him an analogy about Martin Luther, because Martin Luther was one of the great reformers.
Mm-hmm.
Martin Luther broke away from the Catholic Church because he felt like the selling of indulgences was a bunch of junk, which it was. He was right. But 95% or more of everything Martin Luther ever taught was Catholic, that he took with him when he left the church.
Sure.
So the fact that most of what he believed was wrong didn't change the fact that that 3 or 4% was right. Charles Darwin contributed greatly to science, no matter how many things he got wrong. That doesn't affect what he got right.
Yeah. Well, regardless of who Charles Darwin is, what you believe does not affect the Bible the way everybody else understands it either.
That's what I'm saying. I think maybe we just misunderstood one another the other day.
I mean, for a long time. It's been several days. We've talked about it several times, and I've always understood that you thought that what people call, whatever they call it, evolution, whatever, it doesn't matter to me, but whatever they called it was a process that God used to create this man in this form that we're in now. I thought that's what you
even wording it like that, though, Stump. If there was an original created man, which we don't know exactly what he would have looked like, because we know that animals change their appearance gradually throughout time. We know that there was something that was created that was whatever kind that we are, but we don't know exactly what the differences may have been. And we know that through the process of time, this is what we wound up with. So that statement is still true at some level.
Yeah, but we're no different than what we are now. We may have looked differently. We may have been stooped over, had a larger forehead. I mean, they find
that was my whole
thing elongated, right?
Transitional species is a lot of people think that you have to accept that we're chimpanzees just to recognize the reality of transitional species. There's a whole bunch of hominid fossils and Australopithecine fossils that need to be answered for.
Oh, so you see, we're back to confusion again, because you're saying it wasn't apes, but it was some other animal maybe that we changed from, right? Is that
no, I'm just simply saying that there are many, many things in the animal kingdom that are human-esque in appearance, which is one of the reasons I believe that this is an animal.
Well, of course, yeah. This physical body is definitely an animal, no doubt about that.
But we're different from, but we're different from animals. Though we have souls and spirits. Animals don't.
Well, animals are the wrong word to say. I'd say a carnal. This is a carnal body, a carnal type.
I believe
animal, beast, whatever you want to call it.
I believe that animal is the right word to say.
Yeah, well, it's his own type though. It's his own type.
I believe that when Paul spoke of the changed creature, he spoke of this coat of flesh being transfigured into whatever they saw on the Mount of Transfiguration, which was what Adam was created in the beginning. So
that's what we're going to go back to, right?
That would make this a beast by comparison.
So do you believe that animal kind and humankind are both one and the same?
When you're saying human, are you saying human like a human being?
Mankind, human. There's, as far as I know, there's only one type of human. You know, they come in many shapes, forms. They come in many different shapes, forms, and sizes. But if I refer to a human, I think you would know exactly what I mean as a human. Yeah. So, do you believe that humankind and the animal kind are one and the same, or no?
When you say the animal kind, you're saying, do I believe that humans are one of the kinds of animals? Right?
Yeah. Do you think there's a separation?
I believe that this human body that we classify as a Homo sapien is an animal.
I see where you get it. I see what you're saying. I mean, I can say we're mammals, you know, like we're classified as mammals, technically, right?
Do you think?
But I don't see myself as an animal. I see myself as a human being.
Do you think the image of God is a mammal?
No, I think. Well, it's the image of God.
Mammal, though, right?
It's the image of God.
But this is a mammal.
That's what you know. Scientists decided to classify us under. It's a man-made term. But I believe I'm a human. I'm a human being, not an animal.
That's like saying a dog is a canine, not an animal.
Well, but the problem with that is, then God couldn't have gave man dominion over the animals, because
he did give man that. But this is not man. This is a human being.
Yeah, see, that's what I don't, like I said before, the creation account, as I understand it, I understand how we can be classified as a beast or a mammal, whatever, because we're no longer an original vessel as God created
I
us
think we're
because of
saying the
sin
same
corrupted
thing,
it.
Stump.
Right, but with your process, you don't have a timeline. Like, how did we become
But I
this?
don't think you have a timeline either.
Sure, I do. After Adam and Eve fell, this is the result. These mammals.
Yeah, they
Well,
fell
we're
to
spiritually
this mammal. I agree.
Yeah, but so in your timeline, where did this happen at?
Well, that may very well have happened 6,000 years ago. I don't know.
No, I'm saying, but at what point?
Actually, I think that probably happened more like 12 to 15,000 years ago, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, I don't mean timelines such as years. I mean, at what point in Scripture? What would you point to in Scripture when this spiritual celestial body turned or changed into a mammal type carnal body?
Whenever God approached them in the garden and put the curse on them, obviously, right?
So at the fall of man, okay. So do you believe that Genesis 1 and Genesis 2?
I believe when the serpent was put on its belly, that's what you're looking at.
Okay, but do you believe that Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 are the same account as most people believe?
The same account?
The same account.
I'd have to look at them, Stump. I don't have it fresh in my mind.
Yeah, like most Christians believe that Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 are just the same story told in different ways.
I don't even have to look at them to know that I don't think God is redundant. I'm sure there's a reason that they're both told.
Right. Well, sometimes he is. I mean, like the Gospels are told 4 times,
Yeah, but you always get more information with each version.
Right. And that's what I think. That's what they believe. Like,
Oh, you're saying that you don't believe that, right?
I don't believe that. No,
I don't even know if I have a position on that stuff. I would have to think about it.
Well, you know what? One day when we get a chance, we should go over it. That'd be a good thing.
Sure,
we straighten out a lot of things about how misunderstandings I have about your position.
Yeah, I may have just not been clear before. I'm not always the best.
No, it's no problem. I just want to understand because at some point in Scripture, we have to understand when the change became when it happened.
I do believe in an original creation. It kind of frustrates me the way that people hand wave away biology because they don't do that with like physics and germ theory and gravitation theory, and they just kind of pick this one thing to do that with.
Christian, do you believe in the global flood?
That's an interesting question. I believe that wherever people were living, it flooded.
Wherever people, okay. So do you believe in the Bible that Noah, do you believe the account of Noah?
Yes.
That says it was
questions like that, Lupin. I believe the whole Bible.
That says it's a global flood. So
do they use the word global, Lupin?
I would have to look if it says that, but I'm
save you the time. It doesn't.
Well, it doesn't say global, but I think you can extract from.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it says worldwide. I could be mistaken. It's something like that.
Oh, okay, worldwide. I'm sorry, not global. Worldwide. Okay, so worldwide flood. But so do you believe that everyone died? Everything died except for the fish, because all fish probably were having them. That was probably the best time to be a fish. But do you believe everybody died? Do you believe everybody died except for
I believe wherever human beings were living, it flooded.
And they died.
Yeah.
Well, what about some animals that were not living where humans were? Were they covered by water as well?
I think it says they died, Stump. I'd have to go back and read it.
Okay. So the only difference is that you're not saying that every
the whole purpose of the flood was not to punish the animals, it was to punish man.
Well, he does say he will destroy the animals as well.
I have to go back and read it. I don't always keep that stuff fresh in my mind, but I'll be.
Yeah, I'm sure it says that. I could look for it real quick.
Yeah, I know that the purpose of the flood was to punish man.
Genesis 6.
And when do you believe that the flood happened?
My best guesstimate, Lupin, and I'm not tied to this, but I think about 11,600 years ago.
And where did you get that number from?
2 things. There is a suspected ice age that occurred around that time that is widely believed to have been caused by an asteroid impact. And there was a civilization discovered in Turkey called Göbekli Tepe that they've dated back to about 11 or 12,000 years, which made them think that maybe there was a societal reset when that comet hit and that ice age started. And obviously ice age can be a result of flooding. So I think that all that kind of ties together to put it around that time.
All right. Genesis 6:7 says, "The Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for repent in me that I have made them." So he does say he will destroy the animals as well.
Oh, well, yeah, he destroyed the animals.
I don't think he's not putting blame on animals, because he just. I think that shows that man was supposed to care for the animals in the original creation.
Yes,
and not eat them or hunt them, or not. This is how bad the creation was corrupted. And I think this points out that man was originally supposed to. We're tied to them, but we're supposed to be their caretakers, not their.
I believe that the original man was supposed to be their caretakers.
Amen. Yeah.
Right, because it specifically says it says that we were to use the herbs and seeds as meat. You know, it says that in the original creation. So we would all have been, you know, herbivores. You know, we wouldn't have no desire to eat meat until after the fall.
Amen. And even
and especially after the flood.
Amen. And when you look at the Genesis account of the Garden of Eden, animals were going to be help meat for Adam, but instead he didn't find one, so that God made Eve from his rib after that. So it was a relationship between man and animals as being helpers and caregivers, not this that we've come to.
Have I ever told you guys that stupid joke about Adam and Eve?
No.
Y'all got time for a short joke?
I do.
I love this joke. I heard this from an old guy years ago, and he just thought it was the funniest thing. So Adam's walking in the cool of the garden, and the Lord comes and he says, "Adam, I got something for you." He says, "What do you got, Lord?" He says, "I got this thing called woman. You're going to love it. She's going to cook. She's going to clean. She'll do the dishes. She'll run your bath water. She's going to rub your shoulders when you get home." Adam said, "Lord, that sounds great. What's that going to cost?" He saes, "Adam, it's going to cost you about an arm and a leg." And Adam says, "What can I get for a rib?"
How about a rib? Yeah.
I always love that's a corny old joke.
You didn't get that one from Ken Hovind, did you?
No, I heard that.
He might have. I've definitely heard Kent say that one too.
I don't know if I've ever heard Kent say it.
It just sounds like that's what something he'd say.
It's one of them dad jokes. Yeah. But I'm a dad now, so I can tell those.
Right.
So, Chris, so I'm trying to understand, because I wasn't in the conversation, but I was listening to some of it, and you said you believe in the principles of evolution.
The mechanisms of it, yes.
The mechanisms of evolution. What do you mean by that?
The processes. The fact that biology changes according to certain processes.
So do you believe that evolution teaches that we all came from an amoeba?
I believe that there are evolutionary biologists that teach that.
And do you agree or disagree with their teaching?
Of course I disagree.
You disagree with them. So I don't know if you really actually believe in evolution. I don't know, man. I think you have your own kind of theory.
I've been accused of having my own ideas before, Lupin.
I don't know. It seems like you're trying to defend evolution, but it's not really. It's coming off like kind of contradictory.
I am trying to defend it.
I think Christian believes in the same thing that we understand to be what Ken Hovind would call microevolution, and that does happen.
That term makes people more comfortable, and whatever.
Yeah, I think that's the same thing.
Is proof that microevolution has to be expanded a little bit.
I don't believe that. I mean, but okay. Well, I mean,
what if
I basically believe the same thing, just that it's just presented in a different way. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, if people want to use the term microevolution, if that makes them more comfortable, that's fine.
I mean, we believe that.
I say adaptation. I don't like to use evolution because it seems like that term just has lost so much credibility. I see adaptation.
In my opening statement that it was hijacked.
What? I'm sorry, you kind of cut off in the
I acknowledged. Well, I don't know if you were here for the opening statements, but I did the first opening statement. It was about 10 minutes long, and I acknowledged twice in the opening statement that term had been hijacked.
Well, the way you believe it. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Which term was hijacked?
The word evolution has been hijacked.
What was it hijacked from?
Well, in the book on the origin of species, the word evolution was intended to describe descent with inherent modification. All of the extrapolations about that information, all of the assumptions, all of the most extreme interpretations of it have nothing to do with what Darwin actually discovered. And what he actually discovered is what he called evolution.
Christian, do you believe that as some people will say that Charles Darwin, which I see you hold in high esteem as a scientist,
I do.
was a racist?
Yeah, I mean everybody back then was.
It's because his book was for the preferred races or whatever, something like that.
Yeah, but you have to understand that's not really what that word race meant in context. That's a bit of a misdirection thing.
I don't know.
All that meant was survival of the fittest.
Yeah, but it was I forgot the exact title, to benefit for the races or whatever.
I'll look it up for you.
I think
I've read it times, yeah.
I think he was trying to say that certain races were more evolved than others, and this was proven out.
He wasn't saying what you're alluding to.
I think he
I will say this: I do think he probably believed that because everybody back then believed that.
Well, he reinforced their beliefs then. That, like, for instance, the black man was less evolved than the white man.
The problem with that,
different races.
The word "less" is not really a word that means anything in biology. That's what I was trying to explain to Brother Hovind, is this idea of being further or regressing behind. That doesn't really mean anything. Anytime that the environment changes, whatever mutations are most equipped to adapt to that changing environment are the ones that succeed. There is no objective. There is no goal. It's just a constant malleability.
Well, the people of the time thought so that being less evolved was you're less human.
Stump, do you believe that Abraham Lincoln was a great member of the Civil Rights Reformation?
I don't know.
I do.
I believe so. Yes.
You know that he didn't sit at the table with black people and eat dinner?
Like I said, I don't know.
I don't know that. I don't know that either.
If he held,
it's true. I do know it. It's true.
Yeah, but that doesn't affect the conversation that one of his plans was to show that the people were evolved less were less human.
It was not one of his plans, though.
Well, somebody used it, and someone named his book. I thought it was him. Maybe somebody else
named the book, but when he was using the word races, he was referring to different races of animals that had mutations that were competing with each other.
It's funny. I'm trying to find the original title. I know what it is. It's like in the preservation of favored races. Yeah, it's kind of funny. It's kind of hard to find it on the internet. It's like kind of like they're trying to hide it or something. I wonder why.
Yes, it is definitely trying to hide it.
I used to know it. It's like on the origin of species, something, and the
preservation of the preferred races or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Right. It's a long time. But I don't think they used the word race as being animal kinds back then.
No, he did in that particular context.
That sounds like some revisionist to me.
No, it's not. You can read it.
Just like if you find out about the human zoos where they had different people in cages with monkeys and stuff to prove evolution, they'll change that and they'll turn it around.
But so just because somebody did that with information, Stump, didn't make it the information's fault.
Pardon me?
Just because somebody took some information or some idea and did the wrong thing with it does not make the progenitor of the idea.
Well, yeah, I could hear that plan if it wasn't for his title of his book. But you're going to say that the race.
I think you need to read the book
of animals.
I think you need to read the book.
No, I don't need to read the book.
I'm just saying you would have a better understanding of the title.
When the book says races on it,
do you believe in races?
Did he use within the book that the animals were described as different races?
Well, the word races there was being used the same way we use species nowadays.
Okay, well, did he say that in the book?
Huh?
Within the book, not just the cover, but within the book. I want to find
out.
He referred
to different species.
Okay, so he didn't use races in the book.
I don't even know that I'm not even sure if in his initial publication he covered human evolution.
Okay, but
because we all evolved.
Later on in life, he published a book after I think it was after his wife passed away called "The Descent of Man," and that was kind of his take later on in life about how that information impacted human origins. I'm not so sure he even covered that in the original book.
Right, but if he used on the title of his original book for the preferred races, but he doesn't describe animals as races in there, then
yeah, he does though.
That don't add up. Pardon me?
He does. He uses the word races the same way me and you would use the word species.
Oh, that's what I was asking. He used it within the book.
Well, that's what I'm saying is back then they didn't use the word species the same way we use it today.
Right. But I'm saying within that book, the same one that has the title about the races, he used it within the book. That's what I was asking.
The best of my knowledge, he did, Stump. I can look that up.
Well, I'm gonna search for it because this is really interesting because if that's true, then I've been mistaken for a long time.
Yeah, I can tell
heard that before. So
that title never had any. It was never meant to allude to human races.
Okay, that will be the definitive answer for me. If he says within that book, well, the monkey race is preferred because it has developed because of this, then that would prove to me that book cover was not meant to be racist. It would.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
That's
have
good.
any inclination that the book cover was meant to be racist. I'm sure Charles Darwin was a racist because everybody was back then.
Well,
So,
if it's not
well,
used within the book, then at the cover, then these definitely was meant to be racist. It was definitely meant to classify races as less and more.
I think
More
you have
about
to read
better.
the book if you're going to take an opinion about that, Stump.
Well, I'm not going to read it for that reason. I'm going to search to see if it uses races within the book. I don't really care.
I don't. We don't need to. You don't need to read Mein Kampf to know that Hitler was a racist either. I
No,
mean,
but you do need to read it to understand him.
Well, if you, like I said, the word, this is going to be very telling. This is like common sense thing. If he uses it on the outside of the cover as a title, and he doesn't use it within the book to describe animals as different races, then something's wrong. That's just common sense. I mean, that's not hard, that's not real hard.
I think that's really.
But I'm not saying one way or the other. I don't know. I'm going to be open-minded until I read it, until I can find it. Oh,
Well, if I find the word races inside the original book, you will accept that?
As referring to animals, yes. If he says like the monkey race developed from this, then I would say, well, okay, maybe he's not being racist. I would.
Yeah, I will look into that.
I'm not hard-headed. I want to know the truth. I'm gonna look as well. I'm gonna try. There might be a version online even, but
okay, I will look into that.
Okay, let me know if you find it before me. I'll be cool.
Oh, that one fella in the chat did post the original title, by the way. That's one long title, son.
Oh, I didn't see it.
The origin of species by means of natural selection or the preservation of favored races in the struggle for life.
That's what the word "or" is there for, Stump. It says on the origin of species by means of natural selection, and he uses the word "or" to say, or in other words, the preservation of favored races in the struggle for life, saying that's what natural selection is.
That's fine, but I got to see that. I got to see races is referring to animals within this book to understand it.
I think that's a little bit of dogmatism speaking, Stump.
No, it's not at all.
I understand exactly what you're saying.
Otherwise, it's revisionist. It's somebody just saying, well, this is the way we're going to hide that. We're going to say he meant the animal.
Don't you think if you're going to have such a strong opinion, you should read it?
I will read it. That's how I'm going to find out.
I'll tell you this, it's a hard book to read. I bought a copy one time, and it was written to professionals. There's a big difference in scientific literature when it's written to the lady and it's written to professionals, and that's not an easy book to read.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me. I can understand books pretty well.
I got to when I
first in English, I'm good.
15 and gave up.
As long as it's in English, I'm good. If it's in Chinese or something, I'll have trouble.
It's in English, but it ain't gonna sound like English.
All right. Well, I'll see. I'll let you know what I think about it. I'm gonna read it now. You're gonna want me to make me read it.
It's an interesting bit of history.
How long is it? I hope it ain't too long. I hope it's just a couple paragraphs.
I think it's pretty long. If I remember correctly, it's a 5 or 6 hour read.
Well, I know how to speed read, so it's good.
When you pick that book up, you're gonna know about speed reading. He's got words about this long.
I won't understand what I'm reading, but I'll read it fast.
Yeah, I think that it won't take very long before you discover what he means by the word races.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you have any idea of where to even start at that, Christian? Like, where do you think that would be found at, like in the book? I'll
have to go look, Lupin. I had put notes together for certain topics today that me and Brother Hovind, we barely got on one of them and we never got on the other one. So my mind is in areas that it probably shouldn't even been to begin with. I got 14 scriptures with detailed notes on a whole theological subject that we never even touched upon.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you surprised a few people because I think everyone, not everyone, of course, everyone has different opinions and thoughts, but whenever you threw in like evolution, I don't know, because I try and see how evolution could even like fit in the Bible, and there's just not enough time in the Bible if you're taking the Bible as God's truth and God's word.
Well, that's because when you're using the word evolution, you're referring to the really dramatic assumptions that really have nothing to do with what he actually discovered as a process.
I mean, if he just discovered adaptation and survival of the fittest and natural selection, like I said, I don't know if he discovered that. He may have just publicized it. Like I said,
you say the same thing about Isaac Newton, that you don't know if he discovered celestial mechanics?
Maybe that could have been something it could have been something.
It's the earliest literature that we have about it, so we credit it to him.
Yeah, but I don't know if I don't believe it to be true. So
it is true. You do believe it to be true the way that I'm describing it.
No.
Do you believe that Siberian wolves produce teacup poodles over successive generations?
What I believe is that
That's
there
a yes
was.
question.
What I believe is that there during the flood, whenever Noah, that was the cataclysmic event globally that changed everything. So the animals that he would have had would have been genetically super packed. They would have been super packed. They would have had every gene to make any type of dog you would imagine, but it would only be able to make only different types of dogs. It wouldn't be, those
Are you
dogs.
saying you don't believe that selection took place before the flood?
What happened?
Say that again.
Are you saying that you don't believe that selection pressures took place before the flood?
Selection pressures took place before the flood.
I thought that's what you were saying, was that you believe that the process that Darwin discovered started after the flood of Noah. Is that not correct?
I'm sorry.
What's his point? Yeah.
Wait. I got distracted by a comment.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I believe that after Noah took the animals on the flood, so we don't exactly know what the animals were doing, but I don't believe they were evolving, but it all happens. The flood is the pivotal.
Do you believe the
point.
flood is more pivotal than the fall from the garden?
I think it means a bottleneck.
No, I mean for our salvation and our spirituality, the fall is very important. But for what we see in nature, the flood is extremely important. Yes.
Do you believe that Adam started aging and having backaches and stuff after the fall, or that Noah
after
started
the fall?
Flood?
After the fall.
Well, then that means the selection process that Charles Darwin discovered was just after the fall.
I think what he's saying is it was a bottleneck there. That's all. I mean,
it definitely was a bottleneck by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, that's all.
Anybody who accepts Noah's flood in any capacity have to acknowledge a bottleneck.
I mean, just look at Noah's son, right? He says by them three, the whole earth was overspread. So that means every race, every gene of every race, all your features as race features was in them three sons, which
actually
all,
one of the reasons
all in Noah. They're all in Noah. The same genes were in Noah that overspread the whole world, where we have all the different races and are so different. So by skin texture, whatever.
Yeah, through the sons and their wives.
So it was a bottleneck, yeah.
Well, actually, the benefit of that was that even though Noah's genetics were in the three sons, the three wives had genetics that were from outside the family, and that's probably what saved mankind genetically.
That's true. There was three wives that were. That's
probably why the Lord suffered that, so they would have the genetic information they needed.
Well, that's why we have races, but it's difficult for me to connect it to animals and evolution, which I know you're trying to say that we're not related to apes and everything like that, but
I'm saying that in the same way, Lupin, that I'm saying that apes are not related to dogs. I do believe that this body is an animal, like an ape.
So what you're simply saying, which has nothing to do with evolution, that this body after the fall was made to be as an animal.
Well, I believe that it was one of the created kinds of animals that God used as coats of skin when man fell. He prepared it for that reason, knowing that man would fall.
Yeah, I call it carnal, and you say animal. So I mean,
yeah, we're saying the same thing.
It's the same thing, but it's just there's
no
part that evolution had in that part. Evolution had no part.
I believe that
that's what I'm saying.
Go ahead, Luke. I'm sorry.
No, I was agreeing with Stump. I don't think evolution had any part in that process. No.
I believe that the selection process, which Charles Darwin discovered, began at the fall from the garden.
The selection process, okay. That things can change or whatever.
Well, they do. Not that they can. We know that they do.
Well, I mean, do they have to? We don't know. Because we don't know every species that was ever on this earth. We don't know that. So I mean, there could have been some.
It goes back to the cosmic teapot thing. We have to go on what we do know.
Right, but I'm saying we can't be sure. That's a theory. We can say that.
Well, we can be sure that adaptation happens.
But there has to be a pressure behind it, right? You even say that.
Yeah.
So maybe there was a group of animals that didn't have pressures behind them to change.
Well, when Cain went around slaying animals, the ones that ran faster survived.
When who?
When Cain went to get an animal, or I'm sorry, Abel went to get an animal sacrifice, whatever animal he sacrificed, its brothers that ran faster survived and passed on their genes.
Cain actually bought from the ground. So he was kind of fruit or something from the ground. He didn't. It wasn't Cain who. It was Abel that.
No, that's what I meant to say was Abel.
Oh yeah. Well, he took a. I think it was a
Abel. We could say that Abel was
lamb.
Abel was the first environmental selection pressure.
I'm gonna grab a bite to eat. I'm gonna stay in here, but you guys can continue.
Well, not really. I just.
I've got to go in probably.
Oh, you got to go too. You got to go.
10 minutes.
Well, I was gonna say just Abel. He said he was a keeper of sheep, so he was a shepherd. So he wasn't out there hunting like
No, I'm just saying when Abel went to kill one of the sheep, whatever sheep he didn't kill gave forth its genetics to the next generation.
I got you.
But it was actually a form of artificial selection. I've never thought of that before. That's very brilliant.
What do you mean artificial selection?
Because evidently Abel chose which animal to kill and sacrifice and which animal to let live and breed. So actually, even you could say in the beginning that artificial selection possibly predated natural selection. That's a very interesting thing that I've never thought of.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. I never thought of it either because he selected
one first time
without blemish or. So sacrifice wasn't supposed to be weak, sickly, with a blemish. It was supposed to be.
I haven't even been watching the comments, really, man. Let me see. I know that Ryan said something about me and him riding down to Dinosaur Adventureland together. Ryan, if I ever get the free time, Bubba, I'll be happy to go with you.
Well, you're not far, are you? How far are you from there? You can't be too
far.
Well,
we live in the Walton County, Monroe area, which is like near Athens. And right now I'm working back and forth between here and Tybee Island. But yeah, I mean, we're not that far when I'm home.
You got to be a couple hours.
I think it's like maybe 3 or 4 Stump.
Yeah, it's close.
No, it's not bad. I went down there one time. He didn't remember me, but we went. Bubba was having his second birthday. It was last year in July. And Bubs was turning 2, and we wasn't doing nothing over the weekend. So I was like, damn it, let's go take him some dinosaurs at that park, So we jumped in the car and just kind of took off down there on a hunch and got down there around lunchtime. And Bub and the girls was just running around, hugging all the dinosaurs. It was cool. Brother Hovind gave us the big 4-wheel tour, It was fun.
Yeah, I've been down a couple times. It's nice. It's a nice spot.
I told him the next time because it's kind of funny because me and Steven were, before the broadcast, I got here a little bit early. And me and Steven were discussing that maybe if tonight's discussion went positively and didn't turn into a big shouting contest, that maybe the next one I could go down there and we'll just have it in person and broadcast together. And cool. Then when Brother Hovind got on towards the end of the discussion, he recommended the same thing, not knowing that we had talked about that.
Yeah, that would be a good idea, actually.
Yeah.
Since you're not far, yeah.
Well, the good thing is even if we have internet problems, the recording will have both of us. You know what I mean?
Right. Plus, it's always best if you guys like right next to each other. That's
correct. Yeah. Well, I could bring more information. He could bring more information because, he goes into a lot of subjects quick. And I really hate shooting from the hip. I always like to make sure I know what I'm saying. I'm very hesitant to just like guess at something. And so if I knew that I was going to be there in person with him and we had a decent amount of time, I would come prepared.
Right. Exactly. Sure. Have plenty of notes. I'm saying all of us that hang on this channel, we should all meet down there one day. If we could.
Man, that'd be fun. We could plan that. We always have all these big plans, like starting a book club and doing this and doing that. Yeah. And everybody's got life. Everybody's got bills, and it's hard to get around to any of it.
Yeah, that's the problem. That's the real problem. Everybody got different lives.
I'll tell you this. I felt really bad a couple of times on some of our online discussions because I know that one time me and Danny got into it, and I felt bad about that. And then that time me and you last time, we didn't get into it, but it got a little heated, and I felt kind of bad about that. And I've been trying to taper myself off a little bit.
But, I'll tell you the truth. For me, I always know it's just passion. That's all.
It's never meant to be rude. And I will say that one day I was kind of rude toward Danny because of how he treated me in the private messages, but I wish I wouldn't have been.
Yeah. I don't look at it any other way because I know we're just online and whatever. If I huff and puff, don't mean nothing. Now, if I'm in real life and I want to huff and puff, that's something
I've seen a lot of people online over the years who they're so different online than they are in real life. And it's almost like they live 2 different lives. And I try not to do that. Like who you're seeing here, if you were sitting across the table, it'd be the same guy.
Amen. Right. Plus, Christians aren't supposed to get violent, so it's all good.
Correct.
We're supposed to have control. Although, like I say, I look at it as passion. No matter what, it's passion. As long as you don't start calling my mama names or nothing like that, silly stuff, like street stuff, I don't care.
No, I do hate that me and Danny had such a sour taste. I hope that the next time we speak, it'll be better.
Yeah. I think someone mentioned before, we're just all searching for the truth.
I enjoy this broadcast. I've actually bragged about you guys to a lot of people talking about the fellowship that you have because it's such a diverse group of guys, and yet you guys have been able to maintain it. There hasn't been a schism yet, and it's impressive to me that such a diverse group of guys can even maintain such a healthy conversation.
And you're not going to find this anywhere else.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think anyone will allow everyone from atheists to Satanists to once saved, always saved, to eternal security, to predestination, to all that comes up, and it's a discussion. It's not a ending. No, that's it. It's over. So.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I know a lot of my ideas are radical. I already know that. I've read a lot of books. I've met a lot of people. I've ministered at different churches. And I already know entering a conversation that I'm generally going to be the outlier most of the time. So that has helped me not have an immediate reaction to people and just accept, okay, let them get it out of their system and then we'll talk about it, Because like even Brother Hovind, I don't know if you were here for the beginning, but I gave this long 10-minute opening statement where I said a bunch of things that would have he and I generally agreeing. And then when he gave his opening statement, it was, the earth's not 1 billion years old. We didn't come from amoebas, all that same stuff, the tropes that he typically gives as a general opening statement. And it was like, I already kind of covered all of that. Like I already covered that we mostly agree about this,
Yeah, but he like I said, I think Steve said he says the same one all the time, which is, he has so many of them. I'm sure he has some standard.
I think that's not good. And I mean, obviously that's up to him, but I talked to him on the phone the other day when we were getting ready to have the conversation real briefly. And I told him on the phone what I wanted to talk to him about. I said, Brother Hovind, I said, I was going to talk to you about what we know about morphological change. And if we have time, the Christian teaching of predestination. So and I'm not taking shots at him. He's not here to defend himself, but I was a little bit disappointed to get the same old script when I had already kind of told him what direction I was going to go.
All right, but I understand what he says. When he says if he believes he's right, then why is he changing just for variety? I agree with that.
Well, just to zero in on specific subjects.
I'm sorry.
Just to zero in on the specific topics, because like we had between 1 hour and 2 hours, depending on him, which turned into 1 hour because of his connection, and that's not really enough time to go across 5 or 6 different major subjects. If you're going to get the most out of an hour or two, you have to kind of zone in there a little bit.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But when he says that, he believes he's right, then why should he change? I get that.
I agree with many of the things he believes. I admire the man. I mean, obviously we don't agree about everything, but he's done a lot to win souls and feed hungry people and do a lot of good Christian things. And if me and him didn't agree on nothing but that'd be enough for me to respect him.
Amen. I agree.
Anybody who's trying to help people and feed the hungry and preach the gospel, I can find common ground with that person.
Yep, I agree with that 100%. I don't like you. I don't agree with everything he says or his beliefs, but I support him in what he does as long as there's nothing illegal.
I don't think. No, I don't expect he's doing anything illegal.
No, that's what I'm saying. Now, for anybody, I won't make an excuse because you're putting the gospel out there that you should be able to do illegal things to get away.
No, yeah, I mean you have to have rules and regulations, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I trust that he and I will speak again. I think it went well, all things considered. I mean, the worst part of it was just the bad internet connection. Even when me and him had a bit of back and forth, it never really got ugly at all.
No, it usually doesn't with him. The ones I've seen, I've never seen it get ugly, other than maybe an atheist that starts saying something really outrageous. But that's the good thing about moderated debates. They're more civil and they're not spoken over each other as much.
Well, what we had actually planned, Stump, and we didn't get to execute our plan because of the internet problems, but actually what Stephen and I had planned was to have a completely 2-part discussion. We were going to have the first part on morphology, where me and Brother Hovind both give a 10-minute opening statement. We cross-examine one another for about 30 or 45 minutes. We give closing remarks, and then we take Q&A, and that was going to take about an hour and 15 minutes. And then once that Q&A was resolved, we were going to start an entirely new part 2 on predestination, where we both gave opening statements and went through the whole thing again. That's actually what we were planning, but the internet kind of messed it up.
But why predestination? That doesn't tie in with
it was just a separate topic. The reason is because I've been told by several people that Brother Hovind typically does not debate theology. He usually sticks to evolution and biology. And so I am very interested in several of his theological views. So when I was on the phone with him, I was like, Brother Hovind, I know it's outside the norm, but would you be willing to talk to me about a theological subject on live air? And he said yes, which kind of shocked me. So the first one that came to mind that I thought would be interesting to pick his brain about was predestination.
Okay. Also, I thought maybe you tied them together some kind of way.
I mean, there are ways that I tie them together, but that wasn't really the purpose of this. This was kind of 2 separate things.
But your view on scripture and evolution has evolved since I've known you, I believe. I mean, I can remember one time when we
it's
were
always evolving.
Well, I mean, but within a short time. I remember we were discussing about the third and fourth days with the sun and the plants, how it couldn't have been any evolution then. And but now you're saying that you don't believe the plants evolved.
I think maybe I misrepresented myself, Stump. I don't know for sure, but you got to understand, a lot of times I'm talking to people who are in a different community, and I'm speaking to them under the assumption that we all kind of know the same things and say the same things. And I think when I switched over to you guys' group, I took for granted how much our terminologies and things were different. And I didn't always take the time to explain myself because I was accustomed to people from the world that I am in most of the time. So I probably misrepresented it, to be honest with you.
Okay. Well, I know when you're trying to make points on the fly and stuff, sometimes you say things you don't really even mean.
Shooting from the hip. I hate doing that because I'm always nervous that I'm misquoting something.
Plus, I mean, you're under pressure to prove your point.
Yeah,
that's not always the best place to be in when you're not.
That's what I'm saying. I had notes for 2 subjects, and that's all I had notes for. But I had plenty of notes for those. You know.
Let me ask you something. Do you attend a regular church? I'm just a church, regular or unregular.
No, we used to attend a regular church in Monroe, and we had personal reasons for leaving there, and that's about the time that I got on the evangelistic field. So I am always in search of a home church. At the moment, we don't have one.
Yeah, I'm just curious because I know at a standard church, Christian church, if you have other ideas other than what's been taught for centuries, you're going to be either shunned or ignored.
I have been shunned in my life.
Yeah. So I was just wondering because it would be hard to find a church that would want to listen to what you have to say because you have a little different view than.
I mean, I don't go into a church and talk about biology unless they ask me. You know what I mean? I go into a church to preach the gospel.
That's the division of the church that, is so very, very popular right now. That's what I like about these programs is, we might not disagree, or we might not agree, but we're not so divided where we have to shun each other away. I think that's where a lot of stuff falls apart.
Well, that'll happen in regular churches, though. If you go there and state your opinion about something, say for instance, the preacher gave a sermon on the mark of the beast, which is probably going to happen. But if he did, and then you come up and say, well, I think it's this, they don't want to hear it. Yeah. In my experience, they don't want to hear any other dissenting or different view other than what they've been taught and what they in the seminaries or wherever they went. And that's all they want. They don't want to hear nothing else. Yeah, that's why I was wondering if you went to a church.
That's sad.
It is sad.
You made a statement a minute ago. You said, Christian, your view has evolved since I met you. I don't know if that's the case or if I misrepresented it, but I'll tell you this. I hope that's the case. Because that should be what all of us are trying to do is grow and adapt and get better and better.
Amen. But for me, like when I listen to you about you talking about predestination, that brings up logical questions to me. Like for instance, if I believe that there's a 6,000-year plan and then a 1,000-year reign with Christ, the rest, and it is based on the 6 days of creation and the 7th day of rest in Genesis, then that means that predestination may come to play because some way God controls the timing of things.
Yeah,
he has to. So, and that's always been a question in my mind. How does he control?
It's a big subject. It's one of those things that I feel. I was talking to Stephen the other night, kind of in passing on this, and there's certain things that I think are just very clear, concise, obvious, and I think it's only human indoctrination that makes people not see it because it's so obvious. And there are other things that are big, giant subjects that deserve a lot more attention. And I believe that the subject of predestination, foreknowledge, election, preordination, that superseding subject is probably among the biggest, if not the biggest in the Bible, and deserves a lot of patient time, study, and attention. It's not the kind of thing a person should be like, well, I see it this way or I see it that way. It's way too big for that.
I agree 100%. I think it needs deeper study and you need to examine. I'm talking about myself now. I need to examine my own understanding of what I've understood.
Oh, you and me both. Yeah.
New things.
I believe that.
Yeah.
Christian,
go ahead.
Something that comes against your very belief when you're, for me anyway, let's say for me, I can speak for everybody.
It is very counterintuitive. I'll say that.
The common sense questions for me are, well, then why am I in the street proclaiming God's word to people that don't have a chance? Is it to search for the one person that doesn't? He's not sure. He don't understand. But then you
No, it's a very counterintuitive thing. I agree with you.
yeah.
The predestination conversation is going to be good. I was just going to ask a simple question real quick. I don't want to cut you off. Have you looked into any people other than like Ken Hovind that teach young Earth? Like, have you followed who?
I've watched a few of the lectures that come out of the Answers in Genesis organization. I watched, of course, the very famous debate between Ken Ham and Bill Nye a couple of times. And I think there's been more. I don't always remember their names, Lupin, but I have watched 3 or 4 different ministers on the subject.
And what do you think of their teachings and their studies?
I think that their gut reaction to the word Darwin prevents them from seeing the common ground that they could have with people.
I could agree with that, but that would, if Darwin is wrong, which I think, honestly, I think he was wrong on probably a lot of things, if not everything. I don't think he really had an original idea, but I see where you're coming from. But I'm just wondering if you took anything. Because they're very conflicting. They're very conflicting points of view. It's like you can't be one way or another. And if Darwin is wrong, you don't want to just say somebody's right when you know they're wrong, especially when it comes to like the Word of God and everything like that. So,
no, well, that's one of the reasons I was telling Stump that some of this stuff does deserve a lot more patience, and I'm fairly against quick gut reactions and initial responses and things, because, one of the things I was discussing this with Stephen before the broadcast, a lot of times people only disagree in terminology. They don't really disagree in idea, but they use different terms to express that idea. And so it sounds at first glance as though they disagree.
Oh,
so
yeah. You know how many debates Kent has done where the evolutionists are trying to get tied up on kind, like kind is like a game-changing word. Oh, it's not a scientific word, so I can't debate you on that, and it doesn't. Whatever you say is invalid. But yeah, but I mean, yeah, you just can't. Just because it's not a scientific word, it's still a valid word, and I can tell you, it's very obvious what a kind is.
Well, that I don't think is so obvious, but I'll tell you this.
You don't think it's obvious what a kind is?
Well, I'll tell you something that I told Brother Kent during the broadcast. When it says in the beginning that they would bring forth after their kind, I think it's very important to remember that was in the beginning, because even Brother Hovind had to acknowledge that through speciation today, things can get so far removed that they themselves cannot interbreed. And one of the original criteria for kind was the ability to interbreed. So that was made in the beginning when things were close enough. But we know for sure that things with common ancestors can get so far apart that they can no longer interbreed.
You had me in the beginning, and then you kind of fizzled out at the end there.
It's all true. The only problem, Lupin.
I can't. I don't see it. I don't know. I can't.
Teacup poodles and English mastiffs can interbreed, Lupin?
I believe that you probably artificial inseminate them, and they would still be able to produce it.
Sure.
They can't be artificially inseminated.
No, the size difference is too dramatic.
If they're artificially inseminated, does size even matter?
The puppy will be aborted at that point because the mother's body will not be able to carry it.
Well, I'm not sure.
Well, my point in saying that, obviously their genetics are still close enough to where you can inseminate, but the word kind is used to describe things that can bring forth. And in the original creation, they could. But since then, you've had all this time of, things branching away and going over here and getting genetically isolated. So I don't know if that specific criteria still applies because of the fall.
No, but Lupin makes a good point about it. If they're not artificially inseminated, that they could bring forth still after the time.
The baby will die because of the size difference in the genetics.
I mean, is that your theory, or is this?
No, it's true. I have to.
I don't think that's true, because that's how we get different breeds of dog. It's going to start off as a small puppy. It's going to start off as a small puppy.
Are not teacup poodle and English mastiff.
But
So
that
what size is a puppy of an English Mastiff? Do we
The
know?
point is, you can take animals that you know share a common ancestor, and they can diversify far enough to where they no longer bring forth together. We know that.
if I took a male teacup puppy and I artificially inseminated it with a female mastiff, could it have a baby?
No.
You know that 100. You're gonna say you know that 100% equivocally, non-debatable. That's a fact.
I don't think that scientists often use the phrase 100%, Lupin, but I feel confident enough to say it on live air.
Was there experiment you're pointing to, or is it just
There's some research on this. I would have to pull it up. I don't have it in front of me, but it is a pretty well-known fact.
Okay.
I feel like Brother Hovind would probably concede. In fact, he did concede it on the broadcast. He said, yes, we know that creatures can get genetically isolated enough where they can no longer reproduce. So I think the criteria that was given in the original creation before the fall is my position on it.
Yeah, but my position would be that bring forth only means that they can have a child, and it doesn't
that's
naturally. Not naturally, they can have babies rather than a child, but babies. But it doesn't have to be natural.
Do you believe that it's possible for two organisms to become so genetically isolated that they can no longer reproduce together?
I don't know.
That is commonly accepted as true. I'll just tell you that.
Okay, could be.
My point is that would affect the definition of kind for modern day.
Yeah, I get your point. Yeah.
If you're going to use kind and say, well, kind is defined rigidly like this, well, the problem is that the word kind and the criteria reproducing was used in the original creation. It didn't account for genetic diversity.
So if there's no way describing the difference, if whether you call them species or kind,
well,
everything's a new point.
But you can still, if two species are close enough, they can still interbreed. So kind is a little bit more, kind is probably more inclusive than species, I would think.
So is there a way of classifying different types of animals and understanding besides kind or species?
Well, they got all kind of ways now, but species is the word that most people use because it's kind of close, you know. Because but the problem is that speciation, the word speciation means that if two populations that descend from the same group become genetically isolated, that in time they will become so isolated that they cannot come back together. That really does happen. And that violates the original definition of kind. But I don't think it violates the Bible because that definition of kind was given before the fall, before genetic diversity began to occur. My point is, I still acknowledge that they share a common ancestor. They're still the same kind.
Yeah. They just been genetically isolated where they can't interbreed.
Yeah, I mean, if you have like say you have horses, right? And you have you know what the Bering Strait is in Alaska and Russia?
Yeah.
So you have horses, the Bering Strait collapses, half the horse on this side, half the horse on this side. The ones on this side go down to Colorado, and the ones on this side go to India and the jungles. And then you fast forward 2,000 or 3,000 years. The very minute adaptations over that time with those populations being isolated from one another can become so dramatic that if they were ever to reconnect, they would not even attempt to breed with each other. They wouldn't recognize each other as part of their kind. You
slipped in like 3,000 years in there pretty easily, but
that's a really short thing for me to slip in, Lupin.
Yeah, I mean it's a big factor though too.
Do you believe the flood was 4,400 years ago?
Through the timelines, yes.
Okay,
give or take you know
4,400
a few years. You cut out.
How about if we slip in 4,400 years?
4,400 years?
Yes.
Well, I give the Earth about a.
Hold on, you said the flood was 4,400 years ago.
The flood was, let's see, 2,000 years ago. That was Christ. So
YEC theory commonly associates the flood with 4,400 years ago.
Right. So yeah, what's the question?
You said 2,000 or 3,000 years was too long. I have 4,400 according to your theory.
Yeah, but I don't know how that affects the interbreeding, you know, aspect of it.
It does, because you said that I slipped in 2,000 or 3,000 years. First off, 2,000 or 3,000 is not nearly long enough. But going by your theory, I have 4,400 years to work with.
Okay.
My point is 2,000 or 3,000 is not a big slip in.
You know, I don't know. I've heard this argument before with the squirrels, that there's squirrels on like either side of the Grand Canyon or something like that. They're separated by the Grand Canyon or some type of valley where
Yeah.
there's squirrels that I don't know. They say can no longer interbreed, but there's also been experiments where they found that they can. So it's very, very kind of wishy-washy, and sometimes it's kind of difficult to get an answer, especially if there's an agenda behind it. So
I think that's honestly, Lupin, this is fairly settled. I think that that's just because some of your sources just don't want it to be settled.
my sources don't want. I
I
mean,
don't think you're pulling your information from really credible sources.
I don't. Yeah, you might be right, but I don't know.
Well, the only reason I say that is just because this is one of those things that even most young Earth creationists will concede. It's kind of a settled thing.
But what would I be conceding though?
That it is possible for organisms to become genetically isolated to the point where they can't breed.
Okay, so no, I don't. I can't concede that. I don't know.
I'm not saying you have to concede that. I'm just saying most YEC people do concede that.
I guess I'm not one of the most.
No,
I'm not part of that group.
But if you think about that, if that's a true theory and it holds true in all cases, then there should be groups of isolated humans that shouldn't be able to interbreed with any
That's
other
that.
humans.
I was gonna go off of that. You were
Well, the
playing right
only
into
issue
it.
with that Stump, that I'm sure that at some point in history that's probably been the case. But human beings for the last very, very long time have pretty much been very social, and they really haven't been isolated. Like animals cannot overcome challenges. Horses cannot get past the Bering Strait. Squirrels cannot get past the Grand Canyon. Human beings aren't really isolated like that. They can overcome challenges.
Well, I think they are. They found them in the Amazon jungle, haven't had contact with a certain other cultures than their own, and I'm sure they find them all over like that. In the past,
Have you ever heard of
have
North Sentinel
traveled.
Island?
Say it again.
Have you ever heard of North Sentinel Island?
Yeah, that's where the cannibals are, and they kill that kayaker.
North Sentinel Island is one of the most Stump. If you just want to look stuff up, just because it's interesting, North Sentinel Island is this island in between like India and Bangladesh or whatever in the Indian Ocean, and there's a chain of islands. But this island in particular is protected by the government, and you're not allowed to go to it. You're not allowed to get close to it. You're not even supposed to fly planes over it, I don't think. And what it is this group of people that have been there for presumably thousands of years in isolation. That anytime, like Lupin said, that they even get close to the island, they start shooting arrows at them, to the point where they just won't even mess with them. And now the government protects them. So it would be very interesting if we could get some of their DNA and see if we could breed with them. I would love to.
Do you think that we would be able to breed with their women, or their,
I don't know. I don't know how.
You don't know. Okay. You don't know.
Nobody knows. That's the point. I don't know the answer. We can't get any of their DNA.
If they're humans, I would say yes.
But that's not reasonable.
I think that's already been proven when the Americas were discovered and the Indians were here isolated from the rest of the world.
But the Indians were not really isolated from each other, Stump. There were several.
No, I understand, but the Europeans were isolated from them, and they came in and bring them in diseases and stuff. But they could interbreed with them.
Yeah, but that's not the kind of isolation we're talking about.
What kind of isolation we're talking about? They're human beings that are isolated from each other.
But the Indians who colonized the Americas were Mongoloid people that came across the Bering Strait, so they really weren't that genetically different from Europeans.
What do you mean by Mongoloid?
Do you know? Are you familiar with Caucasoid, Negroid, and Mongoloid?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Okay, so Caucasoid, Negroid, and Mongoloid are the three prominent genome organizations of Homo sapiens, and the Indians in the Americas were genetically tested to be Mongoloid, so they're related most closely to like Chinese people.
Right, but they were isolated from Europeans for thousands of years.
That was my point to Lupin, was I think it takes a lot longer than that. He's the one that said 2,000 or 3,000 years.
No, you did.
No, I was just throwing a number out there. That's not my number.
Oh, you'd have to say a million. Well, then we'd have to say, okay.
I think the answer.
There's a time now. Now we're dealing with time.
I think the answer is probably. I'm not a biologist, but I think the answer is probably tens of thousands of years.
Which the Bible doesn't allow for.
I don't believe that's correct.
I don't believe.
Well,
where the time is at. I said it might be the first day. That's the only one I could think of.
What would your prediction? What would your prediction be if you were just to throw? I mean, what if you could interbreed with the inhabitants of the Sentinel Island tribes? What would be your what would you guess? You know, what do you
My
think?
guess, if I had to go on my gut feelings, Lupin, my gut feeling would say yes, but the babies would have a lot of health problems.
Health problems if they were brought up in a modern society?
No, just because of the genetics. I think it's probably riding that boundary so closely that the genetics probably could technically combine, but it's just different enough where it would be issues for the child. That's just my gut reaction to it.
So are they not evolved enough?
What does that mean?
Like
No,
I
it's
don't
just
know.
genetic isolation.
So okay, so the isolation is the only factor that
Well, there's actually two factors there because the island's very small and the population's small, which means that they live in sort of a constant genetic bottleneck, which we know erodes genetic, diversity. So those people probably are in a bit of a bad place genetically, to be honest with you.
yeah. Well, they manage for at least 4,000 years.
I don't know how long they've been on the island.
Yeah, I don't know. They've been there for a good while.
Yeah, they've been there for a while, whatever it is.
So by science, we know that humans can interbreed and they can't be isolated genetically as other animals can. That should be a point to see that man and animals are not the same.
No, I believe that man is its own created kind. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean that should be a proving point against people who believe that man evolved from apes or ape-like creature.
Well, there's two reasons people believe that. Reason number one is just for sheer lack of alternative. If you're an atheist and you want to know where stuff came from, you look to the best theory around. And in our world, that's Darwinian evolution. So that's where they look to for the answer because they don't really have an alternative like you and I do because they don't believe in creation. The second reason is because they've discovered a lot of Australopithecines that were bipeds. So it kind of looks that way.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a theory, but they have to find someone other than God, otherwise they're sunk.
I think that you would probably have to argue that either Australopithecines and Neanderthals and man are all the same kind that diversified from the original animal, or that Australopithecines were a separate created kind. I don't know which one of those is correct.
Yeah, I don't know either. But it's interesting that men, according to science, men can still be isolated yet interbreed. As far as we know, there's no science that proves that.
I think the best example, if we were ever able to test that theory, to my knowledge, would be North Sentinel Island. I don't think there's anybody in the world that's been in such a small genetic isolated population as long as they have.
Well, I think the Indians of North America and the Europeans interbreeding is proof. I mean, we're all related, but still they can interbreed, or they've been isolated, just like the horses you described.
Let me ask you a question. If let's say that there was a woman from North Sentinel Island that all of a sudden had this big idea that she wanted to leave and live in the Western world, and she married a Western guy, and they couldn't have kids, they were not fertile, how would that impact your worldview?
Well, we know that some women can't.
No, but I'm saying because of the genetics.
But the experiment would have to be completed by she could breed with one of her own kind from her island. Then that would say, well, she can't breed with the European.
But you have to, in order for the thought experiment, you sort of have to allow for that. The idea is that we could isolate the fact that it was the genetics.
I don't understand what you're saying.
If we could isolate that the only reason she couldn't breed with somebody outside the island was because of genetic drift, and that was proven to be true, how would that affect your worldview?
No, it would just mean that they also were the same way. All I'm saying is right now we understand that animals can be separated enough and isolated enough so that they can't interbreed again. But that doesn't apply to humans, although the scripture says that animals were created in the carnal creation the day before humans.
So you're saying that you just
at the same time
it doesn't apply to humans?
I'm saying, say it again.
Are you saying that you just believe that just could not apply to humans?
I said the science doesn't show that right now. There's no case where they prove that men cannot interbreed with each other.
No, all I'm saying is, do you think that principle just can't apply to humans?
I don't know because they haven't proved it. They proved everything else supposedly, but they haven't proven that. yet animals can be isolated enough to their kinds are do not
I
interbreed.
don't. I mean, obviously nobody knows, so I wouldn't say that I know, but I suspect very strongly that it is possible to isolate humans to the point where they could not interbreed. I don't see anything that would prevent that from happening.
That's just a wild theory, though. There's no proof behind it at all.
It is a theory, but it's not wild.
I mean, it's not even close because there's no even an inkling of evidence for that right now.
Well, there's evidence that animals can have that happen.
Right. That's what proves that we're not the same as the animals.
Maybe.
To me. Yeah, I think that's a good point. That I don't think people look at it that way. I think that is a very good point. So far, we don't know any humans that have been isolated that don't breed with other animals. We've seen explorers enter new worlds that they thought were new, whatever they are, that where people were isolated, yet they breed with them.
Obviously, the America was not truly a new world. I mean, it had already been.
Well, I said, yeah. It's just that they've been isolated from, say, Europeans have been isolated from them. Yet they come into what they discover and say it's the new world, whatever it is, old, new, whatever, and interbreed with them. That's obviously facts. We have mixed children all the time, everywhere across the world. So,
sometimes those mixed children have genetic issues.
Well, sometimes when you have regular people that know each other and live next door to each other, they have issues. So, I mean, that doesn't prove anything, but it proves that they can interbreed. So scientists that believe in animals can change, and I'm not saying you believe this, from one species to another, from apes to a human, need to do that experiment.
Yeah, my idea of kind is a lot more malleable than Brother Hoven's idea. Mm-hmm. I do believe that the horse's foot evolved. I do believe that like hippocampus and myocampus are a genetic line of horses. And if I'm right about that, that's a pretty radical morphological change.
Okay, so do you believe that like zebras, donkeys, horses are all the same kind of animal?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
all of those are modern equids. They have the same kind of foot.
The only where I disagree with evolution is that a monkey could become a man through enough time, or a flower can evolve from something else that wasn't a flower. I don't agree with that 100%. Now, if things are within whatever you want to call them, kinds, types.
Yeah, I don't know if I think a flowering
can change over time.
I don't think that I would say that a flowering plant can descend from a non-flowering plant. But you have to understand, being part of the flowering plant family does not necessarily mean that you're covered in flowers. It was like the example that I gave to Brother Hovind about wild maize and modern corn. We know those to be related. And the wild ancestral plant was multi-stalked. It was totally shaped different. It was short like a weed. It did not have big bulbous corns on it. If you saw it just walking through the forest, you would never think of it as being related to corn. It has changed radically.
Sure, I believe that. But it was man who selected the breeding.
Well, yeah, well, that was my whole point to Brother Hovind, is that Darwin's discovery was that nature can do that too.
Yeah, like, I agree with Hovind. I don't think he what he did was formally put it on paper. I mean, any type of man that was trying to develop anything could figure this out on his own. But it just wasn't formal. It wasn't just formal. Like
I think that's a really, really bad position. I think if we applied that to people like Newton and Galileo, people would go, oh, but it's the same thing with Charles Darwin.
Wait a minute. But if a poor villager in Africa figured out that he could take corn and this other weed-looking thing and put them together and make this better plant, that's still the same process. It's just not a formally written down. That's all.
No. What I'm saying is
he figured out the same thing that Darwin did.
Darwin's discovery was not selection. Man knew about artificial selection, even though he didn't really know what it was, but he was practicing it. Darwin's discovery was that happens in the absence of man.
Okay, but it's still the poor farmer understood this, whether you say it was natural or not. He understood that it could happen. And whether either way, it's still pressure, right? There's pressure. Man put the two together.
Yeah, I mean, that was the whole thing, was nobody realized that nature was doing that.
Yeah, I don't think Charles Darwin was such a great man. In fact, I think it was pretty bad because his conclusion destroyed whatever he found out and put form on paper. His conclusion is that everything is related is ridiculous, and it makes him a bad man. It'd be like saying,
hey, 2 seconds, Stump, if you don't mind. Somebody in the comments has been kind of going crazy, and I got to get off here in a minute, so I just wanted to try to respond to him before I left.
Go ahead.
He said the two squirrels can't interbreed. That's genetic drift. I agree 100%. Next comment. The research was limited on the squirrels. Yeah, but it wasn't limited on everything. Next comment. If those species of squirrels can no longer interbreed, I would ask why. It appears degradation. Degradation is not the answer. Both of those squirrels are fittest in their own environments. Next comment. The Bible teaches decay and degradation. I don't really know how that relates to the subject. Next comment. How does the evolutionist define kind? Now that's an interesting comment. So kind in the Bible was defined by things that could bring forth. The whole thing that Lupin and Stump and I have been discussing, and that Brother Hovind and I were discussing earlier, was that we know that through natural and artificial selection, populations of the same animals can become so genetically isolated that they can no longer bring forth. I don't think that breaks the biblical definition of kind, because I think that definition was given to the original genetic creation before the fall. I hope that answers your question.
Did I do something? Did I click on something?
I'm sorry, Stump. I didn't mean to cut you off. I
clicked my thing by accident. If you got to go, I got to go too.
I do got to go actually, because I'm in town right now because I'm putting those windows in, So I'm crashing at Tammy's granddad's house, and he's old. I got to go home, so he ain't got to stay up.
Amen. Okay. Well, nice talking with you, man.
You guys, I always enjoy it. God bless you. I enjoyed having Brother Hovind. I hope we get to do it again. I enjoyed everybody in the comment section. If I said anything that offends you or insults you or that you think is wrong, pray for me. I love you. I love the Lord. Just because we see things differently, you're still my brother.
Amen.
Amen.
Okay.
Right. God bless you.
All right. Bye.